Welcome to Universe of Love and Anime, where love stories are told with all your heart. Before we begin our emotional journey today, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone who needs a story that is healing, hopeful, and humane. Each of your support not only motivates us, but also spreads love to more people. Thank you for choosing to stop by Universe of Love and Anime, and now, let's listen to this heart-touching story. Growing Heart. On the night of the Mid-Autumn Festival, she had carefully prepared a full table of food, crabs steaming and lanterns glowing, waiting for Erick to come home. But when the door finally opened, he didn't even glance at the dishes. He walked straight past her with his suitcase, his voice cold and detached. "I won't be able to spend the festival with you this year." She didn't reply. She just kept peeling her crab in silence, the sweetness of the meat clashing with the bitterness in her chest. At midnight, as if on cue, Erick's ex posted a story on WeChat. In the photo, she lay smiling on his back, the full moon casting its silver light through the window behind them. The caption read, "Raising a glass to the moon, reflected as a couple." She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just tapped the like button with indifference. Moments later, Erick called her, his voice tinged with panic. "Don't take it the wrong way. I swear I'll spend next year with you." She paused for a second, then smiled faintly. "Next time?" she thought to herself. "Erick, there will never be a next time." After the holidays, Erick returned home. In the past, she would run to the garden to welcome him. This time, he messaged her, "Where are you?" She responded without much interest, "At home. Eating." Soon, the door opened and he stepped in, removing his shoes. "I'm starving. Make me some noodles. And a half-boiled egg." Once upon a time, she would have rushed to the kitchen. But now, she simply replied, "I've already eaten. Order delivery." He looked at her, clearly irritated, but held his tongue. "You're still mad about the festival? Don't make a big deal out of it." "I'm tired. I just want to eat." She smiled softly. "I'm not mad." He didn't believe her. Nicole was alone in Beijing. It was the festival. "I just kept her company." She looked at him with cool eyes. "I know." He stared at her, searching for emotion, then lowered his gaze. "I'm exhausted. Can you be more understanding?" She remained calm. "I'm not arguing. You're done? I need to wash the dishes." From his pocket, he pulled out a necklace and handed it to her. "Here. A gift." There was no box, no ribbon, nothing like the fancy package Nicole had flaunted online. She took it, emotionless. "Thank you." "That's it. That's it." His face tightened. "Where's mine?" She blinked. "Oh, I forgot. I'll send you something. Buy whatever you like." She transferred 200 yuan to his phone. His eyes widened. It wasn't about the money, it was about what they had once meant to each other. She used to cherish every holiday, every tradition. He sometimes forgot, but she never did. The silence grew heavy. She stood, changed into fresh clothes, and walked to the door. "Where are you going?" he called. "Out with friends," she said, and left without turning back. Ever since they'd been together, she'd stopped going out, cut off social gatherings just because he didn't like it. Her friends had long since stopped inviting her. Everyone knew there were rules in her house. But now, she was finally free to enjoy her own life again. At the gathering, her friends teased her. "We thought you'd traded us for a man. Don't do that again. Men come and go, friends are forever." She nodded firmly. "From now on, I'll be at every gathering. I promise." She realized how much of her world had revolved around Erick. Her work, her habits, even her dreams. And looking back, she couldn't believe how much of herself she had lost. When she got home, it was 3 a.m. She opened the door to find Erick sitting silently on the couch. For a moment, she thought she was hallucinating. Seeing her a little drunk, he didn't get up. He just frowned in disappointment. "Jessica, can you grow up? If you're jealous, just say so. You're married. And you come home drunk like this? Do you think this is normal?" She leaned against the wall, her head spinning. You make too many movies in your head. I had drinks with friends. That's all. His voice rose. I gave you a way out with dignity. What more do you want?
Don't test me.
I'm not a saint who'll tolerate you forever. Her head throbbed, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. She rubbed her temples. Are you done? I'm going to sleep. He sighed and tried to help her walk, but she stepped back. The last bit of clarity in her didn't want his touch. She staggered to the guest room, locked the door, ignored his calls, and fell asleep. It was the best night of sleep she'd had in months. The next morning, he was still on the couch, silent, stormy. She said nothing, got ready, and left. That day, she went to the dance studio and handed in her resignation. She had chosen that place only because it was close to home, making it easier to care for him. But now, she didn't need to stay. Her instructor tried to change her mind, but she was firm. The week before, a foreign dance company, one she had dreamed of since childhood, had accepted her application. Back then, she'd rejected the offer because of Erick.
But now she still had time.
She still had herself. After submitting her final tasks, she called her best friend.
I did it, she said.
They accepted me. Her friend cheered, then hesitated. Does he know? Are you leaving with his support? She smiled softly.
No.
This time I'm going alone. She read his messages without replying. The words on the screen felt distant, as if they were addressed to someone else. I only brought her because the opportunity arose. Don't think badly. If it bothers you, I won't bring her next time. When we finish dinner, let's go home together. But what was left of home between them now? A shell. A place with shared walls and separate worlds.
She didn't respond.
Instead, she placed her phone screen down and smiled politely at her colleagues. She raised her glass once more, laughing at a joke she barely heard. After dinner, while everyone chatted and laughed, Erick stood silently by the door, checking his phone, glancing toward her like a dog waiting for its owner. She stood up slowly, walked past him without a word, and stepped into the cool night air. Erick followed. Wait. She turned to look at him. His expression held something close to regret, but too shallow, too delayed. Why didn't you reply? I messaged you. I brought her by accident, but we're not. She cut him off, her voice quiet but firm.
Erick.
You don't need to explain. Not anymore. He stepped closer. But I wanted you there. I thought we could go home together. She looked at him, her gaze calm. I already went home. I've been doing that alone for a while now. The next morning, the wind outside carried the scent of autumn. Leaves brushed against the window pane as she folded the last of her clothes into the suitcase. Each fold felt like a quiet farewell. She zipped it shut. The sound echoed in the silent room. Erick sat on the edge of the bed, eyes locked on the suitcase. So you're really leaving? Yes, she said without hesitation. When did you decide this? He asked, voice softer than before. The night you said you'd be with me next year, she replied. I realized there might never be a next year. Or even a next week with you. He stayed silent. She didn't wait for his answer. She moved around the room with quiet efficiency, collecting documents, checking flight times. He followed her to the door. Do you really want to leave everything behind? She paused and turned. Everything? Erick, everything is not what I'm leaving. It's what I'm going to find. At the airport, she stood in line, boarding pass in hand. The boarding gate loomed ahead like the entrance to a new life. Her phone vibrated one last time. It was a message from Erick. I hope one day you look back and remember something good between us. She didn't reply. She turned off the phone and slid it into her coat pocket. On the plane, as the engines roared and the ground pulled away, she looked out the window. The city lights shrank, and with them, the weight on her chest. Across the aisle, a child was laughing, pointing at the stars outside. She smiled gently, not because she was happy yet, but because she had finally chosen herself. In a foreign land, months later, she settled into a small apartment near the studio. It was modest but warm. The walls were bare, but the space breathed freedom. Every day was filled with rehearsals, late-night ramen, and new friends who didn't ask her to shrink herself to fit their comfort. One evening, she passed by a local bakery. The scent of matcha and butter hung in the air. It reminded her of the Mid-Autumn Festival, of crab and mooncakes, of silence across a table set for two. She paused, letting the memory come and go. She didn't hate Erick. Not anymore. In fact, she didn't feel much at all. And that was how she knew she had truly moved on. Months became a year. Her dancing improved. Her language did too. Her laugh returned not the polite chuckles she once gave Erick, but real laughter that came from deep within. On the anniversary of her flight, she went to the sea. She stood barefoot in the sand, watching the waves crash and roll. A group nearby was lighting lanterns. One floated toward her, its light soft and golden. She caught it gently and read the tiny tag tied to the bottom. It read, "Wherever you are, may you be at peace." She closed her eyes and whispered, "I am." And for the first time in a long time, she truly meant it. Then he said, "Tomorrow my friend Oliver is getting engaged to his girlfriend. He asked me to bring someone. Will you come with me?" I looked up from my bowl of soup, pausing mid-bite. There was something so absurdly casual in the way he asked, like we were still a couple who shared plans and dreams, like the past few weeks of Cold Wars, indifference, and unsaid apologies hadn't happened at all. I didn't answer immediately. I studied his face, the slight tension in his jaw, the flicker of hope in his eyes, the faint scent of another woman's perfume still clinging to his jacket. "Why not ask Nicole?" I said finally, my voice calm but carrying weight. He flinched. "Nicole won't be going." "Really? Or did she just not want to show up with the guy who still sleeps in the same house as his girlfriend?" Erick narrowed his eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" I set my spoon down carefully and stood. "It means I'm done pretending, Erick.
Done pretending we're okay.
Done pretending this is still a home and not a stopover point on your way to wherever Nicole is." He followed me into the hallway, still wearing that confused, desperate expression, like he couldn't quite comprehend that I wasn't chasing him this time. "So you're not coming?" I turned and gave him a tired smile.
No.
"But you should go. You'll fit in perfectly." That night I stayed in. I made myself tea, wrapped myself in a blanket, and read through old journal entries. One from 3 years ago caught my eye. "He brought me roses today. Said I was his whole world." I think I believe him. I closed the notebook and sat there in silence for a long while. The next morning I packed more of my things. The apartment felt emptier now, but in a good way. Less crowded by illusions. I folded clothes slowly, neatly, as if sealing off another chapter with every shirt and scarf. Around noon, Erick returned from the engagement party. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept well. "You weren't there," he said. "Of course I wasn't. People asked about you." "Let me guess. You told them I was sick or busy, or just didn't feel like coming." He didn't answer. "Did Nicole show up?" I asked.
"Yeah."
He looked away. "But she left early. Got bored." "You should have gone with her," I said. "You two are better at pretending to be in love than I ever was." He sat down heavily on the couch. "Why do you always do this?" "Do what?" "Walk away just when I'm trying to fix things." I laughed then, not bitterly, just sad. "Fix what, Erick?" "We're not broken in a way that can be fixed. We're done. We've been done for a long time. We're just the last ones to admit it."
He didn't respond.
Just sat there, breathing slowly, as if absorbing the truth for the first time. Later that day, I walked to the studio to turn in some final paperwork. As I passed by the rehearsal room, I saw new students stretching, laughing, preparing for their routines. I smiled faintly. A young girl came over and asked if I was the one who used to perform the swan piece. "Yes," I said. "That was me." "You were amazing," she said. "You made me want to dance." I thanked her and left, holding her words like a secret treasure in my palm. On the way home, I bought myself a pastry and sat in the park, watching pigeons fight over crumbs. A child nearby was chasing butterflies. A man proposed to his girlfriend on the bench across from me. Life was still moving, still blooming. And I was still here. That night, Erick tried to talk again. I know you're leaving soon. I don't want you to go like this. How should I go then? I asked. Should I cry? Should I beg you to change your mind? No, he whispered. I don't want to be alone. Then you should have thought of that before you made me feel like I was alone every day. He stood by the door as I zipped my suitcase. I still love you. I looked at him one last time, and it hit Menet with pain, not with rage, just a quiet realization. I believe you, I said. But love isn't always enough. The taxi arrived. I climbed in, closed the door, and didn't look back. At the airport, I watched planes land and take off. Everyone around me seemed to be in a rush to get somewhere. I wasn't rushing. I was finally just moving forward. The plane took off into the night sky. As the city disappeared beneath the clouds, I leaned my head against the window. For the first time in years, I felt light. I didn't know what was waiting for me on the other side. But I knew whatever it was, it would be mine. My story, my choice, my voice. And for the first time, that was enough. That night, Jessica didn't wait for another message. She had already muted Erick's notifications, not out of anger, but out of exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that creeps in when you've long stopped expecting anything new. She watched the video one more time, not because it bothered her, but because she was surprised by how numb she felt. The image of Nicole blushing, the way Oliver nudged Erick and grinned, these used to send her spiraling. But now it was like watching strangers on a screen. She turned the phone off and set it aside. There were only 5 days left until her departure. Each morning that followed felt both slow and urgent. Jessica focused on finishing every loose end, closing her bank account, canceling subscriptions, donating old clothes. Erick tried to keep himself visible messages about mundane things, photos of his meals, short videos of his walks. She didn't ignore him entirely, but her replies were clipped, polite, like answering a coworker. On the third day, he came home early. She was folding clothes on the bed when he entered the room. Do you want to have dinner together tonight? He asked, standing awkwardly by the door. She didn't look up. I already ate. We could go out tomorrow. Just the two of us. She folded a shirt, then turned. Why? Because he hesitated. You're leaving soon. She looked at him. Exactly. I'm leaving. You should be spending time with someone you'll stay with. He flinched. Jessica, don't do this.
She softened.
Erick, I'm not doing anything. This is just the part where you let me go. The next morning, a bouquet of white lilies arrived. No card. She placed the flowers in a vase by the window and didn't ask. That afternoon, she walked to the pier. The air smelled of salt and coming rain. She stood watching boats rock gently, people talking, laughing, moving. A quiet reminder that life continued, regardless of who stayed or left. Back home, she started sorting through old photo albums. Some had dust on the covers. She flipped through the pages slowly, first date pictures, vacations, silly selfies. And then, near the back, one photo caught her attention. It was from that winter trip 3 years ago. They were at a cabin. Snow outside. A fire crackling. She was laughing, holding a mug. Erick had been looking at her, not at the camera. There was a light in his eyes then. A gentleness that had vanished sometime along the way. She took the photo out, stared at it for a long moment, then placed it back and closed the album. On the 4th night, Erick knocked on her door. She was packing books. Can we talk? He asked quietly. Sure. He stepped in, holding something. A small black box. I was saving this. He opened Ida's silver bracelet, simple, elegant, engraved with her name. I was going to give it to you on our anniversary, he said. I forgot the last 2, I know. But this year I remembered. Jessica looked at it. It's beautiful, she said honestly. He stepped closer. Will you take it with you? She took the box, closed it gently, and placed it on the shelf. I'll take it, but not as a promise. Just a memory. Erick looked like he wanted to say more, but the words didn't come. On the final day, she woke before sunrise. The house was quiet. She dressed slowly, checked her passport, her ticket. Everything was in order. As she zipped her suitcase for the last time, Erick appeared in the doorway. "Can I drive you to the airport?" She nodded. The drive was silent. The city passed by in flashes. Traffic lights, honking cars, morning fog. At the terminal, they stood facing each other. "Jessica," he began. "Don't," she said gently. "Don't say anything that will make this harder than it needs to be. Will you come back?" She looked at him. "Maybe. But not for you." He swallowed hard. "Will you think of me?" She smiled faintly. "I already do. But memories aren't always enough to build a future." She turned, walked to the gate, and didn't look back. On the plane, she sat by the window. Below her, the city became a maze of lights and shadows. She breathed in deeply.
She was scared, yes.
But it was the good kind of fear, the kind that comes before freedom. A week later, she stood in a dance studio halfway across the world. New language, new rhythms, new life. She stumbled through the warm-up, laughed with the others, drank too much coffee during breaks. She was finding herself again. That night, in her tiny apartment, she opened her suitcase and found the black box. She placed the bracelet on the table and lit a candle. The flame danced softly, as if swaying to her heartbeat. She closed her eyes and whispered to the silence, "This time, I won't give up on myself." And the silence answered back, not with words, but with peace. But Erick didn't move. His hand trembled as it lowered from her lips, and his shoulders sagged under the weight of everything unspoken. "I don't want to lose you," he whispered. Jessica looked at him for a long moment, her heart pounding with an ache that wasn't new, just louder now. She had waited years to hear words like that, words laced with regret, not defiance. But hearing them now, on the edge of goodbye, only made them feel heavier. "Erick," she said gently, "if you really didn't want to lose me, you should have held me back when I was slipping away, not now, when I'm already at the gate." He opened his mouth, but no sound came. She could see his throat tighten, his jaw clench, like he was fighting back everything he wished he'd said sooner. "Please," he said finally, his voice almost childlike. "Let's start over. I can change. We can be better. Just give me time." Jessica blinked away the sting in her eyes. "You had time," she replied softly. "I gave you time. I gave you years." The silence that followed was so thick it wrapped around them like a fog. Outside, the sky had begun to darken, clouds heavy with approaching rain. She looked at her suitcase, nearly full, sitting quietly by the door like a final witness. Erick followed her gaze, then turned back to her, desperation creeping back into his expression. "I can sell everything," he said suddenly. "My car, the apartment, whatever it takes. I'll find a job wherever you're going. I'll stay in the same city. I won't be a burden. I'll support you." "Stop," she said quietly. "Stop trying to fix something that's not broken anymore. It's over, Erick. I'm not angry. I'm just done." She walked to the window, opening it slightly. The breeze was cold, but it smelled like rain and change. "You always wanted me to be stronger, didn't you?" she said, not turning around. "To not cry, to not depend on anyone, to not be jealous. Well, here I am. I became what you asked for. But now that I've grown into that woman, you don't know what to do with me." Erick stepped closer, but hesitated a few feet away. "I never wanted you to stop loving me. I never stopped," she whispered. "But I stopped sacrificing myself to keep that love alive." She turned then, facing him one last time. "You loved me when I was small enough to fit inside your life. But I don't fit anymore. And that's not a bad thing." A single tear rolled down his cheek. He didn't wipe it. "So you're really going?" "Yes. And nothing I do will change your mind?" "Nothing." He stared at the floor. "Then let me take you to the airport, at least." Jessica considered this for a moment, then nodded. "Okay." The next morning, they rode in silence. The city passed them by like a fading film reel. Erick's fingers tapped nervously on the steering wheel, but He didn't say a word. At the terminal, he helped her with her luggage, though she hadn't asked. When they reached the gate, she turned to him. Erick, he looked up quickly, like he thought she might say she was staying.
Thank you, she said.
For loving me in your way. For helping me realize I need to love myself more.
He didn't speak.
Just stared at her, eyes glassy. I hope one day you find peace, she added. And I hope you find someone who fits your world the way I never could. He opened his mouth again, but before he could speak, she leaned in and kissed his cheek gently. Goodbye, Erick. Then she turned, passed through security, and didn't look back. On the plane, she sat by the window again. The sky was gray, just like the day she had left everything behind. But this time, her heart felt lighter. No more fear. No more pretending. Just a wide, open path waiting ahead. Somewhere between the clouds and the silence, she finally exhaled. And for the first time in years, it didn't hurt. The days flowed quietly after that final call, like pages turning in a book Jessica had finally finished reading. Life in London began to settle into a rhythm: early rehearsals, late performances, coffee in small cafes, evenings spent curled up with books or talking with friends who had no idea who Erick was. The silence in her apartment no longer ached, but instead felt soft and deserved, like a room that had finally breathed out after years of being clenched tight. She stopped checking her phone. There were no more messages, no more missed calls, no more questions she waited to be answered. Erick had faded into the past, not violently, but slowly, like a light dimming until she could no longer remember what color it had been. On rainy days, she would sometimes sit by the window and stare at the passing clouds, not out of longing, but from habit, like someone who had once paced a room but no longer needed to. The pain had passed. What remained was a quiet gratitude that she had survived it. Her dance grew more powerful, more personal. People said they felt something different when she moved, like she carried 1,000 untold stories in her steps. And in a way, she did. Stories of heartbreak, of letting go, of building herself again from pieces no one else had noticed were broken. One night after a performance, she stood backstage holding a bouquet of sunflowers. A new friend came over and said, "You looked free out there, like you weren't dancing for anyone but yourself." Jessica smiled. That was the truth. It had taken years to reach, but finally, she was no longer dancing to be seen, to be validated, to be loved. She was dancing because it was who she was, and that was enough. Months passed. Then one afternoon, while walking past a bookstore, she saw a familiar face printed in black and white on a newspaper cover inside the window. She stopped. Erick stood in the photo beside a woman in a white dress, both smiling stiffly at the camera. The caption said it was a private ceremony. Jessica stared at the image, waiting for some kind of reaction to rise: anger, sadness, nostalgia, but there was only stillness. It was like looking at a dream she once had, now forgotten upon waking. That night, she opened the drawer beside her bed. Inside it was the silver bracelet Erick had once given her. She held it in her palm, feeling its weight, remembering the promises that had never been kept, the apologies that had come too late. Then she set it back inside the drawer, closed it gently, and stood by the window once more. The city outside was glowing. Taxis moved like fireflies, the river shimmered, and laughter floated up from the street below. Life was happening, full, chaotic, beautiful life. And she was finally part of it. She whispered to herself, "You did it," and for the first time, the voice in her heart didn't echo with regret. It echoed with pride. Across the city, in a different world, Erick would go to bed beside someone else, in a house filled with furniture and plans. But Jessica had something different: a life that belonged only to her. No more waiting, no more explaining, no more shrinking to fit into someone else's idea of love. Just her exactly as she was. And from that moment on, she never looked back. Thank you so much for staying with us through Jessica's journey, a story of heartbreak, healing, and rediscovering the strength within. At Universe of Love and Anime, we believe that love stories don't always end in fairy tales, but in growth, self-worth, and quiet resilience. If this story touched your heart even just a little, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to let go, and even better to move forward. Your support means the world to us, and it's what keeps these stories alive. Until next time, stay strong, stay true, and keep believing in love the kind that starts with yourself. Sparkling Heart.